Finding a premium case at a not so premium price has always been a chore for us PC builders. Usually, manufacturers tend to skimp on quality and features in favor of better prices. Well, I've been on the hunt lately for lower cost cases that don't follow this trend, and I think I found another one to add to the list. Let's take a look. Hey YouTube, I'm Danny, welcome to the channel. This premium looking mid-tower chassis is the Antec P20C, and believe it or not, it starts at under $100 US. This case comes in 4 models. $95 gets you the P20C, which is the base model of the case, but it still comes with a massive front mesh panel made of metal, 3 120mm PWM fans, a 1-to-4 fan splitter, and it can accommodate 2 360mm radiators simultaneously. Now they also offer this same spec case in white for $10 more. My build is using the P20C ARGB model, which also costs $105, but offers 3 120mm ARGB fans and includes a hub supporting up to 6 total fans. The last model Antec offers is the P20CE, which comes in at $115. It's the same specs as the base model, however, instead of tempered glass, it ships with a solid side panel. They also offer a CE Elite model, which comes with additional fans totaling up to 6. But I wasn't able to find it for sale anywhere, so I'm not sure if it's real. If you've ever watched our reviews before, we'll do our usual walk around to show you every aspect of the case, starting with the view window side. The glass panel is removed by loosening 2 captive thumb screws, sliding the panel back, tilting out, and lifting away. This glass is thick, by the way, 4mm to be precise. It feels very robust and has metal brackets down the sides. The P20C can accommodate ATX, micro ATX, mini ITX, and even eATX size motherboards. They've included 2 extra pass-throughs toward the front in case the motherboard you choose blocks the first 3. So you have 2 pass-throughs at the top, 5 down the side, and 3 along the bottom. The side and bottom are all protected by rubber grommets too. Antec also includes an adjustable GPU anti-sag bracket between the 2 sets of side grommets. It's adjusted using 2 thumb screws, which for some reason were tightened with an impact drill from the factory. Clearances aren't a problem at all in the P20C. After all, like I said, even up to an eATX size motherboard can be used. It has space for a CPU air cooler max height of 170mm, a GPU length of 375mm, and it fits a power supply of up to 210mm with the hard drive tray installed, or 410mm without. Moving on to the basement or the power supply shroud, it actually has some nice touches to it. It's got mesh ventilation to allow extra airflow to the GPU, and on top, there's mounting locations for 2 120mm fans to further increase this airflow. At the end of the shroud is a GPU power cable pass-through that's not grommeted but does have a beveled edge to avoid chafing. There is an extra cutout at the front of the basement to allow space for up to 360mm radiator mounting. Well, I might as well move to the front since I already made my way up here. The front is where Antec has really put some premium touches on the P20C, like the gold accent strip down the side of the panel. It doesn't light up in case you're wondering. The front mesh panel is metal and it's removed simply by grabbing the top behind the cutout and pulling outward. Behind that is a quick release dust filter providing access to the front fans. This metal panel looks amazing, and I think it's what really brings the design together. It's painted a gunmetal gray, has a triangle mesh pattern for airflow, and it's extremely easy to install and remove thanks to the assistance of lock tabs and magnets. You heard me, magnets. You see this small fabric pad on the panel? This lines up with a magnet built into the front frame of the case, which can be removed without tools if you'd like, but it doesn't need to be. There's a small lip at the bottom of the frame and it takes some force to remove. I just popped it off to look at the magnet. It's held in with a plastic tab and screw. This creates a satisfying snap when reinstalling the metal panel. Not sure if that's the reason for the magnet, but I like it. Behind these panels are 3 120mm fans. Now the P20C comes with PWM fans that are connected with a fan splitter, while the ARGB version's fans are 3-pin. Now they connect to a hub that is PWM controlled, but I'll explain that in a second. The front can accommodate up to a 280mm or 360mm radiator. And now that I think about it, you may want to remove the front panel shroud, that way you can install a front-mounted radiator. It just makes it easier. Okay, let's talk about the top of the case before moving over to the cable management side. There is a magnetic removable dust filter which covers mounting locations for 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. And radiator support is the same as the front, with up to 280 and 360mm support. I decided to use a 360mm radiator just to see what kind of clearances it had. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't have any problems plugging in any of the cables on the top of the motherboard after installing the radiator, which was kind of nice, even with the larger motherboard heatsinks. For top I/O, you've got a power button, case lighting LED button, hard drive and power lights, USB 3.0 Type A, a separate headphone and microphone jack, another USB 3.0 Type A, and a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port. Now the cable management side might be the most important side. They have a huge amount of cable tie-down points. There's also 2 cable Velcro straps on the left side too. I do want to focus on the fan controller that's mounted at the top left of the motherboard tray. It comes pre-installed with 3 front fans cable routed and plugged in. The controller supports 6 total fans, with both 5-volt addressable RGB headers and 3-pin fan headers. There's 6 of each. You could plug 8 RGB connectors into the hub that aren't fans like I did if you want. I have the Liquid Cooler's pump head RGB connector running off the controller as well. The controller has a few additional plugs, such as the LED switch, PWM signal wire that needs to be plugged into the motherboard fan header, a 5-volt addressable RGB header to plug into your motherboard as well, and lastly, the SATA connector to power the controller. In the basement area, there's a hard drive cage which can accommodate 2 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch hard drives, and it can be mounted in 2 different locations, or completely removed by loosening 2 screws on the bottom of the case. There are also 2 2.5-inch SSD mounts on the back of the motherboard tray. These are installed with a push-pin system, which I think is kind of clever. The back of the case isn't overly complicated, but it has some nice touches. It only has mounting for a 120mm fan. It is adjustable up and down, but you can't jump up to a 140. There's also 7 reinstallable expansion slot covers in case you decide to upgrade your GPU later. Antec has included a bracket with 2 thumb screws for easily mounting the power supply. You just bolt it on and then screw it in. They also included a rear slide-out dust filter that was a pain and never wanted to come out. Speaking of pain, let's go over the ups and downs about building in the P20C. I'll start on a high note and cover the positives first. Something that I was really surprised about is the P20C has a lot more cable management space than I thought. Adding a 360mm radiator with 3 RGB fans and an extra fan at the back for exhaust added a lot of cables to deal with. When I started cable managing, I didn't think they would all fit and allow me to close the side panel, but it worked out just fine with no extra force needed. This actually started out as a negative before I built in the case, but once I started putting things in there and kind of tying it all down, it's well thought out and I didn't have any issues. The front of the case has plenty of room for today's larger components. The fact that I have an ASUS ROG Strix card, a 360mm radiator, and I have space for another 360 up front, Antec has really put some effort into thinking about how to do the layout of this case. And honestly, that should be another positive. If you're thinking about building in this case for your first PC build, it couldn't be easier. The last thing that I liked is this has excellent thermal performance as well, and the fans are whisper quiet. I decided to play a couple games on it because obviously I have to see if it performs well, and the GPU's average temp was only 60 degrees Celsius, while the CPU was 65. This is using a Ryzen 7 5800X3D and an RTX 3070, in case you're wondering. Now this wasn't me doing any kind of special flow testing or anything. All I did was slap the side glass on, boot the system up, set my XMP profiles, and play some video games. Just like you would at home. Okay, I know it looks like this is an amazing case and there's no issues with it, right? Well, there is a few negatives. Nothing major, but enough to talk about. The first thing I have an issue with is the motherboard's 24-pin power pass-through. For my motherboard specifically, the power connector was right between the two cutouts. So I either had to route from below and come up to the connector, or route from the top cutout and come down. Not a big deal, but just keep that in mind when you're shopping for your motherboard. The second problem I had is the anti-sag bracket is right behind the cable channel for the fan controller. This must be adjusted before tying down your cables, or you'll end up undoing your work like I did to be able to move the sag bracket. You know, I actually sat here and tried to write down the negatives of the case just to be able to compare and contrast for the positives and negatives, and that was really it. The only other thing I said, like I told you, is the cable management in the back. When I first looked at it, when I first had everything plugged in, it was a mess. And I was thinking to myself, how in the world am I gonna cable manage this? But once I started taking my time with it and planning out the routing of the cables and stuff, I realized how many cable tie-down points there were and how easy it was, even though I have custom braided cable, extensions, power supply cables, tons of fan cables, RGB cables. I mean, there is just stuff everywhere. Let me just say, it looked worse than it was. $100 seems to be the sweet spot for PC cases in 2023. A lot of companies have stepped up their game in this category, and Antec is no exception. If you're looking for that premium feel for a not so premium price, I would definitely consider adding this to your shopping list, especially if you're trying to get everything included for that $100. They give you a mesh front panel for great airflow, 3 PWM controlled fans, and for $10 more, you can get addressable RGB. And don't forget, that gives you support for up to 2 360mm radiators. I just want to give a quick shout out to Antec. Thanks so much for sending the P20C over for us to take a look at. I didn't know what to expect because I've never used an Antec case before, but if this is what your products look like, you made a great first impression. I'd say competition is heating up in the case game, and I plan on checking out as many new PC cases as possible in the coming months. So if you or someone you know needs help with their next PC build, send them on over to the channel to check out some of our other content. Oh, and if I helped you out in any way today, give us a like down below so YouTube's algorithm helps my little channel grow. And as I always say, I'm Danny with Danny's Tech Channel, and I'll see you in the next one.